Good Friday morning, friends. Welcome back. This is another episode of the Finding God in the Dark podcast. My name is Don,
And my name is Jonathan.
and today we are going to take a look at and discuss the 1989 Oliver Stone directed film Born on the 4th of July, starring Tom Cruise. This is, as I understand it, a sort of a semi-biopic that this Ron Kovic is a real person.
Yep.
Um, and so the story, obviously, as with any biopic, and we've done a couple of these, they take some liberties with the story, but
Yeah.
mostly on point. So, and again, 1989, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about stuff. So,
Yep.
where do you want to start on this one, John?
Um, I thought it was interesting to reflect on something I think you could argue, and I would argue Americans do struggle with, which is being able to understand that patriotism isn't solely about something like military service or supporting something America is doing.
Hmm.
Patriotism can also be critiquing America and pushing back on what America is doing. So in this movie, I would argue he's being patriotic when he wants to go and serve the United States and go and to join the Marine Corps and be sent to Vietnam to fight. But I would also argue he's being patriotic when he says this war is wrong and I'm going to protest against it. And holding those two things in tension is something I think is really important to realize that being a patriotic American isn't solely about supporting what America is doing. It can also be about critiquing what America is doing.
Yeah, this film is really set in right in that kind of, I don't know, liminal moment, let's
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
between, the pure patriotism of, hey, this is a communist thing, we got to fight the commies,
yeah,
and wait a minute, this is, like not the greatest thing ever.
yeah,
And in retrospect, we sit here in 2026 and look back at the Vietnam War and go, that was a huge mistake.
yeah,
But at the time, nobody really understood that. I,
yeah.
I don't I don't think anybody truly understood that it was going to be the kind of mistake it was.
And the bigger piece of this is, and this is something, I don't know how much it shaped you, but I was born after Vietnam. So the Vietnam War ended and I was born the year after.
Hmm.
And I have been shaped, and my generation has been shaped by the failure and the problems of it. Not just losing the war, that would have been difficult, but the reality that came out later that the American government had lied about what started the war, had kind of deceived the kind of tactics they were using. There had been a lot of just problems in how uh, they prosecuted the war. Then you have Watergate and the idea of not being able to trust the government. And then you have, so I've existed in a time where people are very skeptical. Americans are very skeptical of their government and very skeptical of what the government says. And this movie starts off at a time frame, or at least, you know, Ron seems to be in a generation where they believed the government, where they believed what was going on, where they didn't think the government would be lying to them. And that has really radically shifted since the Vietnam War. I don't know how much, I know you're a little bit older than I am, but I don't know how much you were shaped by that too.
I mean, to be honest, I have no, conscious memory of that. I think my earliest memories of news stories were Watergate.
Okay.
So, I know that it was going, I know now that it was going on then, but
Yeah.
it didn't, I was so young, it didn't really click with me. I mean, I was born in 64, so
Sure.
this is all happening when I was 4, 5,
Sure.
6.
I,
Um,
I think so. Then for both of us, it's probably hard. to imagine a time where there wasn't some skepticism of what the government was doing, and if you could believe it,
Yeah.
or if, the idea of the government actively lying to you is something I think we both kind of just grew up. That was in the air, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because technically I am the last year of the boomer generation.
Yeah,
Um, but it's a really odd that last few years of the boomers is really kind of an odd
yeah.
you've really more identify with what's it, millennials, I think, and
No, Gen
you know
X, Gen X.
Gen X, yeah. And so it's a weird kind of, like, yeah, kind of traditional thinking, and yet you really were kind of raised in that, like you say, where you didn't really trust the government, that sort of thing. Um, I tell you, the themes, I was looking over the list of the themes that you had sent
Yeah, yeah,
me, and you touched on the last one you wrote was the need to be loved. And
yeah,
this is something that you see in Ron after the war.
yeah,
I would take that even a step further
yeah,
and say, there's this sense that he wants to be whole.
yeah,
That he so it takes him a very long time
yeah,
to accept that he's not going to be able to be the person he was before he went in the war.
yeah,
And this is really a huge chunk of this film is just his quest to be whole.
yeah,
And, in that, rejecting his family and his religion, rejecting his country, rejecting,
yeah,
going off to Mexico and you know,
yeah,
there's like this whole story arc in there of his search just to be whole. Part of that is that need to be loved.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but and we as clergy, right? Christian clergy, we want to bring that back to where we are.
Sure.
And what is it that people need to be whole?
Well,
Well,
and yeah, and I guess as a person with a disability, I have never acquired a disability. I've always had my disability. So I
mhm,
recognize I can't speak to acquiring disability and the difficulty of that. But what I did appreciate, again, it really wasn't touched on, and I'm reading into this, but I would argue that's part of the script is you see here the difference between curing and healing. That's so important. So the difference really is this idea of for Ron to be cured, he would have been able to walk again and not have his disability. But healing is not the same thing as being cured. And so at the end of the movie, I would argue, and even a little bit before, when he's protesting at the Republican convention in 72, you see him kind of coming into who he is, believing in his purpose, believing in kind of his value. And you see him in that scene, and then especially when he's going to speak at the 76th Democratic Convention, you see him, I would argue, as a healed human being. He's found purpose, he's found self-worth, he's found his connection to community, and that is really what healing is about.
yeah, that's it. He's attained, or let us say reattained, his wholeness,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah. Which let's go back to script writing. Good story arc.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, again, it's this. I feel like in a really powerful way, it shows. Look, he did not get back the use of his legs. He never got to walk again, but
Right.
he found a community, he found a purpose, and that lifted him to a place where he was no longer suicidal. He was no longer antisocial. He was no longer destructive in his behaviors. And
Hmm.
that is healing. That just is.
Yeah, indeed. And I think I feel like compelled
Yeah,
as clergy sometimes.
yeah,
We get, folks who are very sick.
yeah,
And we pray for healing, but sometimes we need to help folks understand that healing isn't always what you think it is.
No, it is.
You know,
And I would
healing
argue, yeah,
sometimes means going on to glory, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, absolutely. I really feel like a lot of times um, finding the place where we have shalom again, which is kind of the Jewish idea of the wholeness we're talking about.
Right.
That kind of peace that passes all understanding.
Hmm.
That idea is often found in places we don't expect and in ways we don't expect. And
Right.
that's part of the journey of being human is you recognize that um, your shalom is not always where you think you're going to find it or how you're going to obtain it. And
Hmm.
that's kind of the magicalness and the kind of the mystery of life in a profound way.
Yeah. Yeah. That was for me, that was the one thing I wanted to lift up out of this list
Yeah,
was just that, you know, that I think that need to be loved went to a deeper place,
yeah.
What else do you want to talk about, John?
I thought it was it. I at first the first I saw this movie about several months ago just because I had never seen it and I was just kind of curious.
Hmm.
Um, And I got the same impression this time. And at first I thought, wow, it was really poorly shot or poorly done. And then I realized what they were trying to do. So in this movie, the war scenes are chaotic and weird and don't feel like war scenes. They almost feel like um, kind of just hanging out, then gone to, kind of basically a bad vacation gone sideways. I mean, that's they kind of appear out of nowhere. You don't really get a sense of organization. They're not they're not typical what you're used to as war scenes. They're not clearly demarcated lines. There's not some
Hmm.
heroic actions that's happening. And it kind of all comes upon you. And at first I was like, wow, he really shot this poorly. And then I realized what he was trying to get across was the reality that war in a chaotic state is often messy and weird, and there's no clear line between this and that. And so you really got, in a profound sense, I would argue, the idea of what the fog of war might feel like. You know,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. And I think that comes through particularly in the first scene with the village
yeah,
and where Ron ends up killing the kid, friendly fire
yeah,
killing one of his own
yeah,
uh what am I looking for? Soldiers.
yeah, yeah,
Uh he and that's the fog of war,
yeah,
but it's also sort of the desperation of war,
yeah.
right? Because you don't it's chaotic. And
Well,
and so the
yeah,
the it's
yeah,
filmed that way. It's
yeah,
filmed deliberately chaotic.
yeah,
Not like if you look at a very polished war film like Saving Private Ryan, let's
yeah,
say. It's not like that.
yeah,
It almost in a sense it's almost like just slightly out of focus
yeah,
and has a little bit of a dream quality to it,
yeah.
but not in a good way.
Yeah, and I just, again, it took me two times to really appreciate what he was trying to get at. But like the scene where his commander is going, do you see the barrels of the guns? Do you see the barrels of the guns? And you see his vision,
Mhm.
and the barrels of the gun, at least for me, never show up.
No, there's nothing. Yeah.
And and yet at one point he goes, yeah, yeah, I see him, and you realize that again, that was kind of how it sounds like a lot of people in Vietnam felt. Like it was like, are we sure this is there? Are we sure this is happening? Are we sure that this isn't the way we should do this? And at first I thought he did it poorly, and then I realized what he was trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that same scene or that same sequence,
Yeah,
is, they open fire accidentally,
yeah,
apparently, on
yeah,
this village and end
yeah,
up killing civilians.
yes,
And that becomes a huge traumatizing factor for Ron, that they killed women and children
yeah,
and, they abandoned a baby, you know, but then again, we're going to go back to the horrors of war here.
Yeah,
It was all sort of a trap laid by
yeah,
the Viet Cong, right?
yeah,
So, um, and you, I think this plays also into one of the other themes you wrote, punished for mistakes.
yeah,
Ron punishes himself
yes,
for the mistakes that he made. And, that's the hardest thing because how do you, how can anyone be held responsible for the mistakes you make in the fog of war?
yeah.
That's, that's challenging, I
And
think.
I thought it was fascinating how this film kind of explores the unwillingness for anybody to kind of be held to accountability. So
Mm,
at one point, Ron, after he really feels convinced that he killed Wilson, and that was the last name of the gentleman he shot,
right.
he tries to take responsibility for it. He tries to he goes to two commanders and he basically says, "Look, I did this. I want to, I want you to know about it. I want his family to know about it." He's willing to basically say, "I need some accountability here because I made a mistake."
Hmm.
And they don't try to comfort him. They basically tell him, "If you don't shut up, you're going to be in trouble." Like that's basically what they say
Hmm.
instead of you could have done it several ways. They could have sent him to counseling. They could have said you're probably wrong. You know, they could have said, okay, we're going to have to report this, and then we'll go through a process of kind of figuring out what happened. They
Hmm.
wanted none of it. They didn't want. They didn't want to deal with it. They didn't want to deal with how he felt. They didn't want to deal with the
Yeah,
possibility he was right. They didn't want to deal with the possibility he was wrong. They just didn't want to deal with
right.
it.
And, I think there's also a sense here that there may have just been covering it
Yeah,
and saying, like, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
It doesn't matter whether you did or you didn't. It was a firefight
yeah,
and, and he was shot.
yeah,
Uh, you know, um, what else? I love that you wrote fighting for peace.
yeah,
That I think that's a does it goes right back to Augustine and
yeah,
just war theory, right?
yeah,
Um, how does one fight
yeah,
for peace? How does one make war for peace?
yeah.
Um,
Well, it's this idea of, and again, this is something you can lay at the foot of almost every country and every war. Most countries and most wars, including our own, don't really follow the tenets of just war theory. That
right.
you have to have a clear you have to have a clear attack on you or your person or the well-being of one of your neighbor countries. You have to declare that you're doing this. You have to then target only military, and you
Hmm.
have to have clear objectives and basically say, this is what we're doing. And once we obtain that, we're going to stop. And what you realize when you just briefly study just war stuff is so many of the conflicts America and other countries get involved in don't do any of this stuff.
Right.
And you realize, I think at least, I'm biased, of course, as a Christian, but I think if more countries did this, we would have a saner world. You know,
And that, to be honest, feels like an impossibility right at this moment,
yes,
Jonathan.
it does. It does. It does. And yeah, because I think what is frustrating, and I'm not going to go too far down this road, but I the stuff with the Pope recently has really frustrated me because I'm like, you don't have to agree with what the Pope's saying about war,
Hmm.
but that is very clearly what most Christians have upheld, this idea that we should be striving for peace, that you should have clear objectives when you go to war, and this idea that he shouldn't say those things kind of as a clergy person concerns me because it's like you can disagree with it,
Yeah.
but the idea that he shouldn't talk about it is, I don't know, that's something that's kind of scary when we throw that
Yeah,
stuff.
I don't, it's funny. In friends, if you've been watching us long enough, you know John and I don't always agree on these things. I hear, the Pope statements and I go, well, okay, sure. I
Yeah,
mean, that's what I would expect from a religious leader.
yeah,
Um, and if the president wants to push back on that, if some other country wants to push back on that, that's fine. You're allowed.
yeah,
Go ahead and push back. But he's still saying what he's supposed to say.
yeah,
You know, you don't, particularly if you're Catholic, you ain't got to agree with him.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, I guess that's an example for me of how I feel like our society has so twisted this idea of people can't critique one another without being enemies. You know,
eh,
and I mean that's just very concerning to me. We should be able to have somebody go, I disagree with your policy, and the
mhm,
first response isn't you're evil and trying to destroy America. It's like,
yeah.
no, no. You know, and again, that's why I think it's fascinating. And what I wanted to hold up is I look at what Ron did at the beginning of this movie as patriotic, and I would argue what he did at the end of this movie is patriotic.
Mhm.
And that is he's trying to impact America in what he believes is a positive way.
And I can agree with that. I can absolutely agree with that. I think also in a sense, also both are responses to the current culture around him.
Yes.
Right? They're
Mhm.
legitimate responses to the culture around him. As a child, he's brought up in a way that, soldiers are held in high regard. And, to be a soldier is a high aspiration.
Yeah.
And then, Vietnam turned that on its head.
Yeah.
And, he is a product of that, literally a product of that generation.
Yeah.
Um, so what else? What else do we want to
Um,
talk about?
let's see.
I think that there's something to be said for that whole story arc in the VA hospital.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Of course.
Uh,
Yeah. That is actually well. I put in here about kind of forgotten soldiers, like um, and this is something I would argue you see on both sides of the aisle. When somebody is in power, they love to lather the troops with praise and they're wonderful, they're great. But
hmm
you hear you as pastors, we both probably have seen this and heard this. You hear from returning soldiers how horribly we treat returning soldiers, especially when it comes to
yeah,
their health care and their mental health care.
yeah.
You know, and in this
Still,
movie,
still,
no, yeah,
still,
yes.
not just,
No,
I mean,
this
like
isn't Vietnam stuff. Yeah, yeah,
notoriously post-Vietnam, these guys
yeah.
really got hit hard by,
Yes,
by
yes.
folks going back. But still today,
I mean,
we do
a
this.
good example is, John Stewart gets a lot of credit for pushing this, but like we just last year dealt with the burn pits that were happening in the Gulf, where um, to try to stop the fires that, granted, the Iraq government started.
hmm
But we put them out in ways that weren't very well done in terms of just well-being. And it has led to a lot of soldiers dealing with healthcare issues.
hmm
And we just now, over 20 years later, passed legislation to really deal with it. I mean,
Yeah,
to me, that's unacceptable. If you're impacting soldiers that way, it shouldn't take them 30 plus years to get help.
yeah,
Like, just and so we love to hold up soldiers as they're fighting and pray for them and all those things. But you also have to care for them when they come back and they have disabilities or they have mental health issues, or
yeah,
they're struggling to find work. Like, you know, if you're going to ask them to serve, and call them to do dangerous things, then you have to care for them when they come back. Like, you know,
Yeah, and I think one of the big ones that gets thrown around a lot today, at least, is you have a lot of homeless veterans,
yeah,
which is like, I mean, at the very least, why are we not taking care of these people?
yeah.
What, like, where is our conscience in this country? You have to ask sometimes, you know?
Yeah, and we luckily at my church have a homeless, but we the our church office has apartments above it, and we have worked with a local veterans group to do transitional housing for homeless veterans.
That's nice.
And it's a wonderful program, but it took us a long time to do it, and we had to make so many guarantees to our town that it would be just veterans because they were worried we'd turn it into a place where just homeless people could be, you know. And you realize like we just have so many issues
Mhm.
recognizing that we have to go out of our way sometimes to help people. Like, you know,
It's funny. This is a little bit of an aside story, but we had a homeless vet who was living in his truck,
yeah,
who was a patron at our food pantry.
yeah,
And at one point, he came to me. The woman who runs the pantry brought him to me,
yeah,
asking if he could park his truck in the church parking lot.
yeah,
And I said, "Well, here's what I have to tell you.
yeah,
I cannot give you permission to do that
yeah,
because of insurance issues.
yeah,
But if you do, I won't call the police on you. Now, if someone else does, you're going to have to move."
yeah,
But, because you don't like, I would work to try to get someplace for this guy, but he had been through so many of these programs, there was like no access. And, where we're at is pretty rural down here. So,
yeah. I don't know. I think I mean, one of the sad pieces of this story is that, you know, he was just not taken care of well after he came back. And we have a bad history of doing that. And that's deeply saddening, and
and
maddening too.
and to be honest, I mean, some of that was certainly his family. Some of it was certainly the government and the culture.
Yeah,
But some of it was him too.
yeah,
The addiction, the drinking, the addiction issues, and that again, that search for wholeness and love and whatever,
yeah,
drove him to bad places.
yeah.
Um, but you know, whole whole body, whole culture problems deserve holistic answers.
Yeah, and again, it's this idea of if we would have been better about we are going to surround you with care and we're going to make sure that we're going to realize you're going to have, I mean, at that time it's probably called shell shocked, but we're going to realize you're going to come back with maybe those issues, and so
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
we're going to put we're going to surround you with care. My guess is he would have had less of those issues, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And nonetheless, it's a story with a good ending. Not
Yes.
necessarily a happy ending, but
Yeah.
a good ending.
Yeah.
And for a biopic, I'll take that. This was one of Oliver Stone's first big films, like
Yeah,
this and JFK, right?
I believe it was right after JFK.
Yeah. So, and I know it was an early film for Tom Cruise as well.
Yeah.
And you can see there's a real sense here, and I'm going to go to the acting side here. There's a real sense here. You can see how green Cruise was
Mhm.
in this film. I mean, yeah, I think he's a very good actor. He's not
Yeah.
my favorite,
Yeah.
but you can see how green he was in
It
this
was
film.
funny. I will have to say I kind of chuckled because a running joke, if you watch a lot of movies, a running joke is that Tom Cruise finds a way to run in every movie. And I was like, oh, he won't run in this movie. And then the dream sequence, he actually starts
Gets
running.
up and runs. Yeah. All right, friends. I think we got to wrap up our discussion of Born on the Fourth of July. If you have not seen this film, it's worth a watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a little hard to watch. There's obviously it's rated R for a reason.
Yeah. There's
You
violence, there's
know,
nudity, there's drug use, so keep that in
yeah, but it is worth a watch. It'll move you a little bit. Let's say that.
mind.
Um, so John, you're on the clock. Where are we going next week?
Well, I'm gonna let you pick between two things, okay?
Okay.
So I was thinking I'm gonna keep on with the theme of movies about America or important things in American history, okay? So would you rather review Lincoln or Nomadland?
I'm not familiar with Nomadland.
It won the Oscar in 2020. So but it's basically about a woman who becomes part of RV culture and goes across the country.
RV culture.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Um, oh, that was
Frances McDormand, yeah.
but the director,
Oh, Chloe Zhao?
Chloe Zhao
Yeah.
from Hamnet, right?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, she got a lot of praise for that.
Yeah.
And that's
I
about, and
have,
the other one is
yeah,
Lincoln.
yeah, Lincoln. Spielberg and Daniel Day-Lewis.
I don't think I've seen that one.
That's I have not seen Nomadland, but Lincoln is amazing. So,
IMDb, and that's from 2012.
yep. So you pick one of those two.
Okay. Well, let's I'm intrigued by both actually.
Hmm.
Um, let's do Nomadland.
Okay.
And
That's
just
on.
because of the director, I think she did such I thought a really great job with Hamnet.
Yeah,
So
she actually won director that year, best
yeah,
director.
so
It's on Hulu for those who'd like to watch it.
it's on Hulu. It's also on Amazon Prime as a rental,
Okay.
which I think most of the films that we have watched have been at least available on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
We've watched a lot on like Netflix and other stuff, but um, okay, so then next week's film is Nomadland, starring Frances McDormand, directed by Chloe Zhao. And until next week, friends, keep on finding God in the dark. We'll see y'all next Friday. Take care and God bless.
Bye.
Thanks again for watching the Finding God in the Dark podcast, friends. If you've made it here all the way to the end of the video, then obviously you find something that we're doing to be educational or informative, something valuable in this podcast. So we want to invite you to go ahead and share this with your friends. Hit the like button. Follow us for more of this. We publish every week at 10 a.m. on Friday mornings on YouTube. Shortly thereafter, you'll find us somewhere on Facebook. Until next Friday, keep on finding God in the dark. Thanks for watching. Bye now.